Kettle's on. Tea bags at the ready. Milk in the fridge. Going to be in here a little while. What we're doing today is changing the fork oil. Tools for this job. We need an axle wrench, which is 22mm for the Tiger Sport. The one I've got's got all different sizes. And the benefit of that is, you know, it's a 22, so the other end on here is a 19, so you need a 19mm socket to go on there to undo that. A 32mm socket for the top of the forks. You need a 5mm key for the mudguard, an 8mm Allen key for the calipers, and then for the pinch bolts, that's a 6mm Allen key. First thing we want to do is take the mudguard off, the wheel off, the brake calipers off, and then we'll start work on the top of the forks. Make sure that's a good tight fit, and then loosen that off. You don't need to take these out, just loosen them off. Next I'm going to take the mudguard off. So the mudguard has these covers which go over, and that's now completely loose, ready to come off. However, there's one thing we've got to do, and that is you've got to unclip your brakes from these clips here on both sides. That's that side done, and this side we just pop them out. That's it, and then we can remove the mudguard, hopefully. Just do a little wiggle to get those clips through the forks. So we'll give that a clean a bit later on before we put it back together. Okay, when we take the brake calipers off, we've got to suspend them. Don't want them hanging on the brake cables. So calipers off next, and we'll hook them up onto the bodywork somewhere. If your bike's got ABS, you need a 4mm Allen key to undo these and remove your ABS sensor, otherwise that could end up in disaster. Just spotted that. Right, so we've got everything clear to take the wheel off, just got to undo this. So I'm going to put something under the wheel, take this out and let it drop through. That's the axle out. Wheel off. These nuts on the top, we'll crack them first and then loosen the pinch bolts and drop the forks out, and then see about changing the oil. Never done it before, first for me, so let's see how it goes. I've got a 32mm ring spanner that I've used to loosen these off. So don't need them undone, just loose. So all the pinch bolts are loose, and we're going to try and remove the forks by a twist in action to break any grip these have got. Amazingly, they came out a lot easier than I thought, so we'll clean them up first, then we'll take this out, pour the old oil out. Taking the cap off the fork, loosened that, I'm just doing it by hand now. Hopefully nothing's going to fly out and hit the ceiling. Right, that's as far as we take it out. Now we're going to tip it upside down, get the fork oil out. So what I'm doing now is pumping the fork leg to get more oil out the mechanism. Right, leave that to drain, and the same procedure for this one. We'll just leave those to drain. Be quite a while, I imagine, before they finish draining, so make a cup of tea and clean the bike up a bit. So these take about 600 millilitres of oil. So I've got my fork oil, and I'm now going to fill with the first fork leg, tip it back and pour it down here. 600 millilitres. And we pour it in nice and slow. So I'm just pumping the oil into the fork. Right, I'm going to leave that one and I'll fill the other one. Right, the fork oil has to be 30 millimeters down from the tube with the spring fully compressed. So I've used a ratchet strap to pull that down as far as I can. I don't think that last little bit will make much difference, but I think that's the fork fully bottomed out, if I'm honest. So next job is to measure that fork oil, make sure it's 30 millimeters below here. I might make it a little bit more, I might make it 40 millimeters just because I haven't got that all the way in. It's important that you have too little fork oil than too much. If you have too much, what will happen is when the fork compresses, the whole fork fills with oil, and you can't compress liquids. You can compress air, which is why you need that air gap, and that means your suspension is thumping against something solid. And there's two things will happen. Under braking, either your back wheel will come up and you could lose control of your bike because the front end has suddenly hit the solid, a solid stop. So effectively it's, as far as your suspension's concerned, it's hit a wall, so the back end will come up. Worst case, your fork seals will just blow out. You'll get fork oil pour all over your front wheel, all over your brakes, and guess what? You're going to have an accident. So too little is better than too much, and too little will just mean your suspension's a bit softer than it was or planned to be. So make sure you take care with your fork oil level. So I've set this with this ring just resting on this clip to be 40 below the top because the spring isn't compressed. Like I say, I'd rather have too little than too much fork oil, and we'll see how much we get out. So that is about 20 mil maybe. So I'm going to duplicate this on the other fork leg, and then we're ready to put them back on the bike. And we got a little bit more out of that one, but those forks are now set how we want them. I'm now going to use this as a dipstick with its measurements on, just to see with the spring uncompressed how far the oil is below this line, and then I'll make a note of that for future reference. Right, we've done that, and that came out at 70 millimeters. So empty your fork oil, pump it, drain it, leave it upside down for a good 15-20 minutes till everything's come out. Refill it with about 590 milliliters, and then drain it down so that it's 70 millimeters below the top here where your oil is. So if you've got one of those depth gauges, set it 70 millimeters and draw out the excess oil, and that should be the fork done. Now, I'm no professional, and that's my best guess. We'll see how it performs when it's back on the bike. If you've got any doubts whatsoever, this is such a safety issue that that would need to go to a garage to be done if you're not confident. So with the same 6mm Allen key, we're just gonna undo these, which seem a bit tight. Next job is to loosen this nut. That's a big one. Right, you need a 38mm socket to go on here, but we don't want to damage that nut or that surface. So what I do is I usually get one of my old gloves, put that over the nut and push that on firmly. There we go. There's the nut removed. Now there is a little spacer in there. That's quite hard to get out. These pinch bolts are undone, so theoretically I should be able to manhandle this top yoke off. As you saw before, I took the top yoke off, which could only do when I got the forks out, which is disappointing because I've got to realign the front end, but I'll show you how to do that. It's not difficult. When it comes to the sockets for here, there are two listed. One ends in 23 and one ends in 24 of the Triumph parts. So I ordered the part it said in the manual, which is this one, and doesn't fit. This is the 43mm one, and this is the one ending in 24, Triumph part ending in 24. So then I ordered the one ending in 23, which is this one, which I think is 45mm, and this one fits. So I'll write down where I got this from. This is the sport version. The manual I've got is for the sport, and it says it should have been the other one, unless the supplier has sent me the wrong parts under the wrong order numbers, which I doubt. It's the 23, which is the one recommended for the Tiger 800, I think. But anyhow, we're going to loosen that off. You will also need C-spanners. So you'll need these to hold the locking nut, which sits under here, while you tighten the top nut. So make sure you get yourself some C-spanners. Again, I'll put all of the parts and where I got them from in the description. Right, so first thing now, we're going to loosen this nut off. What will happen is, as I take this off and then I undo the locking nut underneath, this assembly here will all come loose. I might have to disconnect the horn. Just gonna crack this nut, put that in place, hold it firm, and loosen the nut off. It shouldn't be too tight. Now I've got to remember the order these come off in. So this one I'm putting upside down, take the washer off, put it upside down on top of the other one, and now we've got to loosen this one off. This again shouldn't be too tight, but this will start dropping the bottom yoke, so we just need to be conscious that we need to get hold of that when it starts to come loose. As you saw, that took nothing to loosen that off, because it's not a high torque setting, and we'll cover that when we put this back together, how to set the headstock bearings. Whoops, put it back to the tank. And that is the headstock assembly and the bearings. So I'm not using a microfiber cloth, fluffy one. This is got no lint or anything, so nothing's going to get in these bearings. So we can lift this completely off and get rid of all the old grease. Very messy job, and it turns the cloth you use into a rag for later, because you're not going to get this stuff off if you try and clean it. Right, so that's them cleaned up. I'll just do the same with this shaft, being careful not to damage this rubber seal. I didn't film it, but the horn is just a 12mm nut, so I just undid the horn, put the nut back in, the bolt back in here. But yeah, 12mm. Right, cleaned that up. All the bearings are spinning freely. Cleaned this up as best I can. There's still some marks on there, but the nuts go on really easy, so that's not a problem. None of them are surfaces where the bearings go, so I'm okay with that. Right, we've also got from the top, this is the dust cap, and the rubber seal that protrudes after we've cleaned it up, remember that goes down. We then have this spacer, which we're cleaning now, getting all the grease off. And here's the upper bearings after I've cleaned them. What I always do is I make sure each and every bearing moves smoothly in the race, so that you know they're going to work fine and there's no rough spots or tough. If you come across one that's tight and after you've cleaned it a lot it's still tight, you need to change the bearing. So the next job is to clean the top and bottom bearing houses and get all the grease out of here. So that's the old grease out. So here we've got all the old grease out. This is the grease I'm using, Mobile Grease XHP 222. Just putting plenty on. Then I'm going to do this bit. Don't know if this needs grease on it, but it's getting it whether it likes it or not. Put grease around the edge there. Finally, I am going to put some grease around here. Again, I don't know if it needs it, but I'd rather have more grease, because when you tighten it all up, it will get rid of the excess grease. I'm also going to put some grease around here. Right, bearing goes in. The spacer goes in with the narrow edge downwards, and then the top cap goes on. The bottom's a lot simpler, there's just the bearing race and the cup it goes in. I won't film that because it's the same as the top. Right, I've greased all the bearings, I've greased the shaft as well. Whether you're meant to or not, I don't know. I'm now going to reinsert this. You've got to get it obviously the right way around, so that hole is in front of the forks. So here, just like matching the top yoke, that's the way it goes. This furthest back. Be a bit embarrassing to put that on the wrong way around. I'm also going to spread a bit of grease under here, which will help it seal against the top. Just nip this up finger tight for now. Right, that's just nipped up there and tight. Okay, the procedure here is to torque this up to 40 Newton meters, then loosen it, and then tighten it up to 8. Seems very slack, but that's the procedure. So, torque wrench is set for 40. Right, that's it done to 40. So now we slacken it off. We're now tightening this to 8 Newton meters, which is very slack. That's it. Now make sure that is fully across, because we don't want to adjust this torque setting. And we're going to be tightening the next nut up, so we swing this so it's tight, so when we're turning it there's no movement. Put your tab washer on. Put the locking nut on. Torque wrench set to 40 Newton meters. What we've got to do is hook our C-spanner on the headstock nut and tighten this up to 40, but keep that headstock nut perfectly still. We don't want to be adjusting the torque. There we go. yoke should move freely, which it does. Right, so now reseating the top yoke. I'm just going to lightly tighten up the nut on here, and then we're going to feed the forks through, set the height correctly. But we're going to put the horn back on first, don't forget that. Headstock's done, that's lubed, tightened. All we got to do now is put the forks back in, make sure we get them the right way round. So on an ABS model it's easy because you've got these two screws here, but your forks have different functions. So the way you can tell is the colours of these nuts. So the silver one goes on the left hand side of the bike as you sat on it, and the gold one goes on the right hand side of the bike as you sat on it. That's that in there. We'll be measuring this height shortly. Just going to put the other one in. Same procedure. Got to set the forks at 35.5 millimeters. Don't know if you can see that. That's 35.52, close as I can get. And that is from the bottom of the clamp to here, where the nut on the top of the fork joins it. So that there to that there at its highest point is 35.5. And you can see there that is too low, so I need to push that leg up. So I'm going to do this adjustment off camera and come back when it's done. Now we've got the forks set at the right height, we just need to tighten these caps up, and that's 36 Newton meters according to the manual. They're torqued up now, so I'm not putting the handlebars on yet. I haven't tightened this nut yet, because now we're going to reassemble the front end with everything loose. So I'm putting the wheel back on. It's always a good idea to clean the old grease off the axle and put some fresh on. So I've done that. Now I'm going to push the axle through and get the wheel fitted. So we're going to tighten this up to 95 Newton meters, but leave this bit undone. Right, so I'll put the caliper on. Very loose. I'm going to tighten these up a bit more in a minute, but it's to get the ABS sensor in place. This needs to be torqued up to 9 Newton meters. And we'll put the caliper on the other side now. Same thing, just hand tight. Right, to set the forks, we have everything loose apart from the axle, which is in there torqued up properly. These pinch bolts are loose here. The mudguard's loose. The brake calipers are loose, so these can move on both sides. These pinch bolts here are loose. These pinch bolts here must remain torqued up or your bike will fall on the floor. And this nut is loose. I've got the bike on its centre stand, and the next job is to do what looks like CPR on the bike to get everything in line. You put something, so you've got your hands on here, stand up above the forks and then do CPR action. So push down. Now hopefully that squared everything up. You've got to get off the bike very carefully after you've done that, because you don't want to knock anything. So hopefully that's us set. The tightening process is to tighten this up so that it's tight but not torqued. It's then to tighten up these clamps. using the 1-2 method. So we tighten this one a bit, then this one a bit, and this one again, and this one again, and then when we come to torque them, they'll be evenly tightened up. So top knot, bottom yoke, pinch bolts, brakes, 22 Newton meters for these little beasties. And again, we'll use the 1-2 method. That's torqued now. And so is that. We'll just double check this one. That's it. Right, torque them up now. The setting's 3 Newton meters. My torque wrench doesn't go that low, so we're just going to do it hand tighten a tiny bit. Right, now as I said, remember, clip your pipes back in, which is important. Next we're doing the stem nut. Glove over the top to protect it. That's the socket on, and this is 90 Newton meters. So this is quite a toughie. Right, that's that torqued up. So everything is tight by the brake calipers. Next job, I'm putting the handlebars on. It's going to be pretty hard to see and hard to film, but there's an alignment mark. Can you see that? Cross. Maybe I'll turn it upside down. There is a white cross. Now to get that to factory setting, you have that white cross in the top corner. See there now? But there's a little bit of that cross showing just underneath that clamp. Now tighten these up to 26 Newton meters. To set the brake calipers, we pump the brake until that feels firm, which we got now. Good solid brake lever, and we're set at the required 55 Newton meters. And what we're going to do is pull the brake on, keep the brake held while we tighten the caliper up. So it's great if you've got a friend to help you, but if you haven't, you just need something like this. So that's got the brake lever pulled back and clamped in place, so the brakes are on. And we do the same on the other side. So the brake's done, so I can release this now. Once that's all torqued up, hopefully it will all be nice and true. We need to do a test drive to find out.
This is the shakedown ride after the 12,000 mile service. And the good thing is the forks are aligned. They're nice and straight in line with the handlebars. So that process worked. Brakes are fine. Feels nice and smooth. Just going to try the suspension over some bumps. Feels fine.
Right folks, that concludes the 12,000 mile service on this here Tiger Sport 1050. A lot of work, about £200 worth of bits. If you find this as a good guidance, then great, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. Would appreciate it if you would subscribe. And yeah, hopefully you can save some money by doing some of these tasks, if not all, depending on your skills and competence. But again, any doubts, take it to a motorcycle mechanic. It's your life you're playing with some of these components, so don't mess about. Right, that's all for now. It's Gordon from Up North Biker in the garage, signing out, and keep safe and keep riding.